Hey everybody, this is Hercules Penix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Hercules Penix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at different beat comics. Today I'm also more drunk than I've been in, years. And I'm going to try to do this video and see what happens. I probably won't even release this, but I'm going to try. But I have a good reason for being so drunk. After my vertigo kind of went away, after 3 weeks of not doing any physical activity, my sciatica flared up like a motherfucker. I've been in total excruciating pain most days at work, walking around and shit. And so I'm self-medicating. I think I did too much today. I medicated beyond what I needed. I'm really drunk. But I'm going to try to do this. You probably won't see this. This probably won't be releasable, but I'm going to try. So Different Beat Comics was a comic published by Fantagraphics Comics in 1984. Kind of a fun idea. It's, all the Fantagraphics regulars, like Dan Clowes and Pete Bagge and Jaime Hernandez and Gilberto Hernandez. They had all these rare little comics that were in other publications, popped up here and there. So this is collecting all these rarities of the Fantagraphics stable. There's some new comics in here, never before published too. And for example, this cover by Dan Clowes, Worth the Price of Admission. He did this just for this anthology. So right there, you win for buying this. Let's see what happens when we open up the cover. So we have an inside front cover by Joe Sacco. I never knew this. I'm a Portland guy, but I only moved here in 2007. I guess back in the early 90s, Joe Sacco had a regular weekly strip in the Willamette Weekly, which is our alternative paper, called Painfully Portland. And this is, you've seen this before by this time, but I think in 1993, this was a little fresh, talking about how, all the cafes now, you gotta order a triple appleberry mint latte with whipped cream and chocadoodle sprinkles. And Joe Sacco is obviously not that kind of guy. So he's basically bemoaning the fact that, whatever happened, just get a cup of coffee. And of course, there's poetry readings at these cafes. Even then, Portland was very, hip. So he decides to drive out of town, go to some, truck stop diner to get a nice cup of Joe. And he's all happy. He's hanging out with these truckers. And he says, what'll it be I'm buying? And this big burly trucker says, triple appleberry mint latte. Kind of funny, even though it's such a played joke, the whole making fun of coffee drinkers. But I think in 1993, it wasn't that played. We got a contents page, introduction by Kim Thompson. So we start off with Kids These Days by Peter Bagge, and it features all of his characters from Hate. So this is from Details, the 92 issue, right around the time of the election. They got all these indie cartoonists to do this comic supplement that was all about, the election, which I looked at, 4 months ago. So I'm not going to get too in-depth into this comic because I just, kind of talked about it a few months ago. But it's basically Buddy Bradley and all of the Hate crew are talking about the next election. And basically, you can imagine these slacker dudes are just I'm probably not going to vote anyway. What's on TV? They're just probably not going to even vote. This next comic is Terry LeBan. And this was originally printed in Roller Derby Fanzine. And, I don't think I've ever enjoyed a Terry LeBan strip in my life, I gotta say. I think he's got good cartooning chops. I love this, how it's like, this intro panel looks like Harryman or something. It's kind of cool. But I gotta say, this is probably the best thing I've ever read by him. Here's just a fun little idea where this guy walks by this business that's offering a speedy sex change, 50% off. He becomes a woman. He's having a great time, having 25 multiple orgasms. And, but then, of course, he has to deal with male harassment. And he's like, I thought this was great, but fuck this. So he goes back to the store and says, basically, make me the opposite. She gets a giant dick and, like, becomes a massive, burly dude. And it seems like he likes that just as much. He beats the shit out of some guy. He goes to a bar and some floozy hits on him like, ooh, look at you, you big hunk of meat. So, not much to say here. Not really taking a stand, but I guess I can get both sides. They're both kind of fun. So we have a Peter Cooper piece, reprinted from World War III Illustrated. Peter Cooper always doing like kind of graffiti art and stencil stuff. I kind of like this though. It's called "In God We Trust," and we see a dollar bill basically, but we see the little Monopoly guy, the millionaire. He's walking through the dollar bill. He basically shoves his dick at George Washington's mouth. We see jizz on his mouth after he leaves. He goes up to the eye in the pyramid on the dollar bill, pokes in the eye, and then walks off. And then throws a lighted match and just burns the dollar to the ground. So kind of that's pretty much America in a nutshell. We have this lofty ideal of like, yes, this represents the government, our currency. But these like billionaires, they don't give a shit. So next we have Say Man by Gilberto Hernandez. Once again, sorry, I'm not going to get into this too much because this was in that Details comic. But it's basically like a political dialogue about the 92 elections. We have a Dame Darcy 2-pager. This apparently was like released with her 7-inch single that she had back then. And it's pretty fun. Nice cartoon from Dame Darcy. It's almost like a very Edward Gorey type thing, It's actually written in rhyme. Next we have, wow, who is this? Oh, this is Pat Moriarty. And it's a story about Tom Reynolds. And I guess, Pat Moriarty always gets other writers to write his stories. He illustrates interesting autobio things from other people. This isn't much of a story. It's just, he's on a bus. He meets this weird old guy who tells him some kind of interesting things. I think that Pat Moriarty story is, it's an unpublished strip, so. This is kind of nice. Getting an R. Crumb sketchbook story. Even if you own the American versions of the R. Crumb sketchbooks, I only own a few. I don't own all of them, but I wish I did. But this is exclusive to the German sketchbooks. So apparently these weren't published. Even if you own all the American sketchbooks, you don't own this. Very kind of weird for R. Crumb. Look at this like scratchy sketchiness here. And it definitely reads like a sketchbook thing, where R. Crumb's just working out some issues he's had at the time. But our Crumb is such a cartoonist, even in his sketchbooks, which are basically like his diary. He can't help but turn it into like a very nice looking comic strip. Oh, this is fascinating, and I wish there was more of this. So, in the 80s, Dan Clowes worked for Crack Magazine. Peter Bagge did too. I'm surprised this is in here, because from what I've heard, Dan Clowes is just like totally ashamed of this shit. He did goofy cartoons for Cracked for money. And, the humor isn't nearly as good as Dan Clowes' normal strips. But I gotta say, I love early Dan Clowes when he was really riffing on Bernard Crickstein. And it's fun as hell. And Peter Bagge wrote it. So, once again, it's not as good as what Peter Bagge normally writes. He had to tone it down for Cracked. But man, I would love a collection of all those Dan Clowes Crack strips. I mean, I think there's enough where it could be a nice size graphic novel or a collection. He did a lot of work for them. But I have a feeling he's just like, no, that's never coming out. I don't want to see it. So I'm surprised that even in 94, when Dan Clowes was already on his way to being Dan fucking Clowes, that he allowed this to be reprinted. This is very like a Mad Magazine article. Cracked Magazine article. And let the punishment fit the crime. So, it's kind of goofy. But, I mean, I love this cartooning. This is so good. It's beautiful. We have a one-pager from Jim Woodring of Frank. That's always a great thing. And I guess this was like originally printed in like just a mini comic. It was later reprinted in one of the books of Jim. And so you can find it elsewhere, but at the time it was very rare. And of course, it's a beautiful, typical great Frank strip. I mean, is there anything less than a great Frank strip? They're all great. This was particularly weird, though. Like Frank is riding one of those spirit animals that Jim Woodring loves to draw. He falls and conks his head. It looks like he has a concussion. He's bleeding. So Manhog finds him and just says, he's not going to help him. He just says, ooh, meat for sale. He puts up a sign. And when Frank wakes up before this triangular chicken gets to eat him, he walks back and Manhog dies of a heart attack when he sees him. He's like, he's supposed to be dead. And just by coincidence, he dies right next to the meat for sale sign. And Frank is like just sitting there like, oh, I guess I'll sell him for meat. And he winks at the audience. This is interesting, which I don't even know why it happened. But, this is like in the 80s. Jaime Hernandez was full on to his Love and Rockets run. But I guess there was one story. He was like, oh, I got an extra story. I'll sell it to this great Canadian anthology, Vortex, instead of just printing it in Love and Rockets. The He That Walks. Oh, God. Jaime's so good. And it's weird. This is about a guy who has a double H-bomb inside of his chest. So I guess Earth just built him a duplicate of planet Earth and like sent him there. He doesn't seem that chuffed by it. He's just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of nice. I don't have to wait in line for movies. And there's nice food. But apparently there's like 1,000 people who live there. Religious nuts, thrill seekers. But they hang in the big cities. He just hangs out in the boonies and he likes it. He's a loner. But then we cut away and we see this guy, the scientist, and we see Cheetah. She's almost like a superheroine. And he says, you must get to him right away. So this guy is just like, oh shit. The Black Glove is after me. That's like some weird, shady organization. He figures they could use him in one of their plots to threaten world peace or something. They're no good next, basically. So he's getting fucked with by these guys, and Cheetah shows up and saves him. Oh my god, I feel like I'm dying right now. I have not been this drunk in fucking 10 years. But I'm still loving the Simon Hernandez art. I know it's gotten better over the past 30 years, but this looks great to me. So the Black Hand shows up. Is that their name? Am I fucking that up? Let me check. The Black Glove. Yeah, the Black Glove. And they're like, because the scientist, father of Cheater, says, I'm going to cure you of that double H bomb. And they show up and say, no, we need him to have that. And Cheetah knocks him out. Such a great expression on that face. Fucking Jaime. Next we have a Jeremy Eaton one-pager. I don't know if you guys ever read Jeremy Eaton stuff. He had a great comic from Fantagraphics called Whatnot. Really clever motherfucker. And it's called The Rose-Colored Man. This actually is very atypical of Jeremy Eaton. This simple style with no backgrounds. He's usually very ornate. We got a two-pager from J.D. King, which I guess this was repurposed and formatted into one of his crap one-man anthology titles. And just very typical funny J.D. King shit. I love how many panels are on this page. He really squeezes a lot of shit into 2 pages. Not much of a story, though. Just a few gags. I'm sorry, it's a 3-pager. I forgot. And then we have a Roberta Gregory story that was, I think, never printed before. The less said about this, the better. I'm sorry. Not a fan of Roberta Gregory. Very unappealing art. Usually her stories are pretty unappealing. I don't think I've ever read anything by her I've liked. We have a nice little 2-page thing about all the creators and where these stories came from. We have a never before published Doug Allen page. Just amazing Doug Allen surrealism. This makes no sense, but kind of fascinating. And then this is really nice. I'm surprised Chris Ware let them publish this because he's so finicky. This is one of the pages from New City, the Chicago Alternative Weekly, where all these Jimmy Corrigan strips first ran, plus other things. Of course, he took all of these and edited them down to make his graphic novel Jimmy Corrigan. But I was lucky enough to be living in Chicago in 1991. And I would clip these out of the paper every week. I mean, I knew about Floyd Farland, his graphic novel from like years before when he was a freshman at the, University of Texas, Austin. Oh my God. I was sending these to my friends all over the country. Any comic friend I knew, I was like, guys, this is like one of the best comic artists in the world. I I can't believe he just publishes this weekly strip in this alternative paper. Full color. Not as nice as this because it's slick paper. But I gotta say, I really wish Jimmy Corrigan would lighten up. I'm sorry, Jimmy Corrigan. I wish Chris Ware would lighten up and allow these to be reprinted. Because I gotta say, love, love fucking Jimmy Corrigan, the graphic novel. But in some ways, when he published these as one-page strips with a little punchline at the end, a lot was missed in the graphic novel, the way he reformatted them. They're great unto themselves. And of course, there's a lot of things that never made it to the graphic novels. He edited out. But believe me, I was reading those strips every week. They were all great. Of course, Chris Ware is such a finicky guy. He was like, oh, I don't like that one. That's not good enough to be in my graphic novel. No, they're all fucking great. They're all better than 99% of any comic ever made. So it's like, let us be the judge. Please publish those. I own, I don't know, maybe a year's worth. I wish I lived in Chicago longer because I would have clipped out all of them. I literally would pay $1,000 for all those, Chris Ware strips that'll never be collected ever. That's why I'd pay $1,000. It's worth it to me. Because I remember when Jimmy Corrigan, the graphic novel, came out, and I was like, that doesn't work as well as it did in that one-page strip. It was almost perfect as this one-page strip. The gag at the end. But when you expanded it into the graphic novel, still brilliant. I mean, it's one of the best graphic novels of all time. But still, it was no, that one-page strip is better. Which, luckily, I own some of them. Because, believe me, you'll never get to read them anywhere else. So I'm so amazed that he let Fantagraphics publish this one new city strip. I don't think any of these have ever been published before anywhere. Of course, edited by Chris Ware's dictates. But if you've read Jimmy Corrigan, yeah, you'll remember this. This is a sequence from Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth. But it's a little paced differently. The art's different. And some of those strips I own from the new city, they were no, they were never reprinted, never incorporated into any other Chris Ware graphic novel or Acme Novelty Press. That's gold to me. And I just see sad artists like that who are oh no, I'm ashamed of my earlier stuff. I don't want it printed. It's like Dan Clowes is kind of like that, It's dude, it's still fucking great. What do you care? We get the context. We know you were young. Yeah, it sounds good as your shit now. But give us the opportunity to own the shit and enjoy it, Especially with Chris Ware. I mean, look how accomplished this is. Right out the bat, his weekly comics for the new city probably didn't get paid much at all. They were better than any comic out in America. And I was reading a lot of comics then, Well, I still am, but I was actually buying new comics then. And incredible stuff. So this might be worth the price of admission alone. Just getting one of these. But of course, this is great. This is all new Dan Clowes. And Dan Clowes is always great. Well, I guess he was more great back then. His art has been suffering lately, unfortunately. Okay, guys, I don't even know if I'm going to post this. It's probably terrible. I can barely sit in this chair right now without falling over. But I wanted to try to do a video because I've been doing one a day for a long time now. Maybe I'll wake up in the middle of the night after sobering up a little and I'll do this again. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm such a bad YouTube channel host. I'm a bad influencer. I'm sorry. But maybe this will be interesting to people. It'll be a jackass type thing. Oh, wow, this guy was completely obliterated, and he still made a YouTube channel. And, oh God. It's been a long time since I've been this drunk. And I'm a drunk. I get drunk a lot, but not this drunk. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching. I doubt you enjoyed this video. I'm never going to pretend to thank you for enjoying this video. I'm sure I can't put this out. Of course, I might tomorrow morning. I'll just be like, fuck it. But thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Doubtfully. If this is your first video, you'll be like, fuck this guy. But hopefully I'll see you next time here at the Hercules Panics Academy of Comic Book Studies.